Hey again everyone, and welcome back to the channel for the next installment in our new figure showcase series. And I did take a little bit of a break, so these are coming to you about a week later than I wanted to, but for those of you joining us for the first time, this is just a series I do taking a quick look at a newer acquisition. Most of the time it will be a more recent 6-scale release, but there are exceptions now and then. But for today's installment, I'm jumping into a series you don't normally see on this channel, and that is Star Wars. And in particular, we're going to be looking at the Grand Admiral Thrawn 6-scale figure by Hot Toys based on his appearance in the Disney Plus Ahsoka show. So if you've watched some of my stuff in the past, you know I love the character of Thrawn. Not from the show, but from the books. The Thrawn trilogy was an amazing Star Wars story that really cemented Thrawn as a master tactician and a real threat to our heroes. And I actually purchased the sideshow version that came with the command chair. If you watched that review that I did for that one, you know that the sideshow Thrawn unfortunately hasn't aged well. The head is oversized, the body isn't the best, and the tailoring, well, for its time was okay, but very much in need of an update. So in steps Hot Toys. Granted, not the same version of Thrawn, but an updated version nevertheless. So for me, this was exciting, and look, I liked Ahsoka a lot. Wasn't perfect, but was pretty entertaining, and in his limited screen time, I did see a glimpse of the Thrawn from the book, so I'm hopeful to see his story continue. I do confess I haven't watched any of the animated shows, so I'm not familiar with Thrawn's story arc there at all. But enough of that. Let's take a look at the package we're getting here from Hot Toys, and maybe, not surprisingly, the figure itself is very simple and basic, without many accessories, although Hot Toys did throw in the components to create a small diorama that actually works really well. But besides that, you're getting a variety of hands, a tablet of sorts, a blaster pistol, and the standard Star Wars type rectangular base with what seems to be either an Imperial or Destroyer type flooring, and like I mentioned, the pieces of the diorama. Now let's jump into the accessories as we normally do, and we'll start with the hands. Interestingly enough, you do get one gripping hand, but more so, Hot Toys is giving us pre-posed hands to create a nice variety of looks that don't really require the figure holding anything. But look, beyond that, they have that distinctive blue paint on the surface, replicating Thrawn's skin, with the dark nails that are almost black in nature. So overall, really solidly done here. Next up, you get his command tablet, and it's pretty cool, and I'll start with the paint apps. On the one side, you have a screen that has a visible display along with a series of switches and buttons, but overall, the paint app here is impressive. Screen is immaculate, but the metal bits and pieces all around are showing significant scuffing and paint wear, letting you see the age behind it. That also carries through to the back, where you have some scuffs and scratches, so Hot Toys did do a good job weathering this up and recreating that exile feel from the show. Next, you get Thrawn's blaster pistol, which, for any of you Star Wars fans that might be watching, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've seen this version before. It's a very sleek pistol with a nice black paint app, a textured grip including some red dots over the trigger, and then the barrel is a nice silver paint. Pistol has a ton of nice details, and it's just very sleek and simple. It's what I would expect an Imperial officer to carry on his person, as opposed to a bulkier rifle, so looks good and fits in Thrawn's holster well. Final accessories are these cylinders that go on either side of his chest, uniform, tucked into pockets. Now these are, I think, access cylinders that allow him to access certain terminals. You get a total of 4 of them, and they do include some nice detailing as well, particularly near the top where there's an almost brass looking piece that clips onto the tunic. Now, let's get into my favorite addition to the set, and that's the diorama, which is an attempt to replicate the holographic display that we see Thrawn looking at during the course of the final episodes of Ahsoka as he's commanding his troops. Main element is the mountain housing the Witch Temple and the Star Destroyer sitting on top with the ring for the additional engines. Very nicely done, and the paint here looks great with that subtle gold and striations throughout, creating that image of a hologram. And it sits on this clear plastic post and base. Now I do want to flag the underside of this because there is a peel off for 3M tape, and the reason you get that is for the next piece of the diorama, which is this large plastic circular piece that's meant to replicate the surface of the planet, showing the red and blue dots indicating friend or foe. But to have this sit flush under the hologram, Hot Toys wants you to essentially stick it on the mountain piece. Fine, it works, but I do dislike having to essentially permanently assemble these together. So I do have to mention that you don't really need to use that tape. I basically assembled my diorama without using the tape, and just having the lower disc held tight to the projection via pressure on the attached pole. Yes, it doesn't look 100% flush, but it works and it avoids having to just permanently affix everything together. Fully assembled though, it does look amazing and gives Thrawn a display that I do actually think brings him to life and gives you some very good posing options. But now let's move on to the figure itself and the highlight, which has to be the sculpt. So first of all, the fact that he does have that blue face immediately makes him stand out. But furthermore, the highlight has to be the eyes, with that really intense blood red and the slight variations on the irises, including the black on the outer portions of the eyes, just give you something that looks otherworldly and intimidating. Along with the jet black solid slick back hair, it's honestly not how I pictured Thrawn in my mind, but the look has grown on me, and I think he looks like an officer with a presence. Detail work here is incredible. Behind the blue paint, there's a ton of great attention to detail by Hot Toys, from the wrinkles on the forehead and the details on the cheeks to the bags under the eyes. Just looks great, and I think they captured the likeness from the show perfectly. Now, the rest of the figure is pretty simple. After all, he is an Imperial officer, so he does have a version of the traditional Imperial uniform, although he does have some unique details, particularly on the shoulders and on his collar. Not sure what those are meant to designate, but they are a little different from what we've seen before. But other than that, it's a standard white uniform top with the billowed out pants that tuck into full leather knee-high boots, which unfortunately I do think are pleather, so for anyone who collects Hot Toys, pleather is always a bit of a cause of concern, but for right now they look great. Belt is Velcro closed, so you can detach it, and there is an included holster for his pistol that has a magnetic clasp. The tunic itself does have some very nice detail work, especially on the shoulders, where there is some slight stitch work, creating kind of a bit of a panel looking element that just adds a little bit of an extra detail. And then the chest plate with the multicolored cells looks great as well. Tailoring on him is really great, with the material not fully restricting posing, which is a bit of a problem when which while it's not a problem with the uniform, the boots do restrict posing a little bit. But again, this being Thrawn, I don't think you're really going to need to pose him in a very dynamic look. So I think it works. One last thing on the overall uniform. When Hot Toys announced this figure, I did say he looked a little bit too clean. That, and they helped Thrawn out by making him look a little bit leaner. But to Hot Toys' credit, if you look closely on the shoulder and on the right portion of the chest, Hot Toys has a printed element on that almost shows some stitching becoming undone. We've seen them do this before. Here it's so subtle you could almost miss it. And on top of that, the bottom of the tunic and the sleeves are a little dirty. And that's not from me handling or dropping the figure. That's just the way he's coming out of the box. So there is some slight weathering there that I think is appropriate for where we find Thrawn in the show at this point in time. Even with all of that, let's talk about the positives, which is the figure has really great posability, with double jointed elbows that let you achieve some decent poses with the arms. I would caution you just to be careful. The uniform sleeves do tend to bunch up at the joints, so you would want to just work them free to give you a better overall look when you're posing. But he looks great. The hands that Hot Toys gave him do allow you to do some interesting things, from him holding his hands out in front of him kind of in a thinking pose, just to having that pose with a fist held in front of his face. They did a great job of giving you hands that let you recreate the scenes from the show that really do make Thrawn look like the tactical genius that he's supposed to be. Throw in that diorama. And look, I know that these diorama pieces take a lot of space. They do. And look, I'll be the first one to tell you that while I love the main mountain portion and the destroyer portion, the surface disc is just cheap plastic. But it looks good, and posing Thrawn around the display just brings the figure to life, giving you that feel of a commander overlooking his troops. So very, very nice release from Hot Toys, and for me, a welcome upgrade to my current Thrawn. So that was a quick look at the Thrawn release from Hot Toys. I think they did a great job, and I couldn't find any major faults with this guy. So very much a home run for them, especially if you're a fan of the character. So as always, let me know your thoughts on this one, and if you're enjoying the content, please consider dropping a like, comment, or subscribing. And thanks for watching, and we'll touch base on the next one.